Thank you, Brother Dawood. First of all, I'm really honored and privileged and sometimes don't feel deserving to be on a panel with the Congressman and with Imam Dawood and Ingrid, so thank you, Isna, for this opportunity. The first thing I want to say, if we're talking about collective conscience, is we have to recognize one thing, that there are Muslims that are not in Islam because they can't afford to be here. So let's recognize that first. And they can't be part of this. And I pray for the day that we provide those opportunities to bring these important discussions and this information to those in our communities that are just as well deserving as us to be here. So for me, as a Muslim, it's important for me to think about, how do we do da'wah, right? And a lot of times it's like we want to sit somebody down, some like white American, and you're like, Islam is about these 5 things, and we have to pray 5 times a day, and we fast, and they start trying to explain Ramadan, and I'm like, really? Like, unless you're trying to convert someone, like that's not really helpful. And what I found is that the most impactful and effective form of da'wah is being part of the social justice movement. And when asked, why are you there? Why are you standing here? Why are you working? You say it's because this is what your faith teaches you to do. So what I do in my work and what we do around the country with the activists and organizers that I work with is that we organize on issues of social justice because that is what our Prophet did, and that is what our Islam tells us to do. Our Islam does not tell us to pray 5 times a day and go back to our daily lives and just be with our families or be with our communities. Our faith teaches us to make sure that our neighbors and that our community and that the people around us are taken care of, and that is what our Islam says. And a lot of times when we talk about issues, we don't realize that the very issues that other people are working on are our issues because we always think about only ourselves and our families. So I don't have a sad story. I'm not, a child of a poor family. I never grew up in poverty. But that doesn't mean that I can't work in the social justice movement. I'm not an undocumented person. I don't have to worry about being deported. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't break my heart when I see Muslim families broken apart by the immigration system. Just because I'm not black and my 15-year-old son is not a black young man doesn't mean that it doesn't break my heart when a mother has to cry over her child who is shot in cold blood by police departments across the country. So the fact that we have to, in our community, question whether or not an issue is ours, really that is the question of your faith and your iman. And I tell that to people all the time when we have discussions in our community about what issues do Muslims have to work on. If you have to ask me why we as a community need to speak up when a community in Ferguson is occupied by military forces, then you need to go back to the masjid and start questioning your faith, your Islam, and what prophet you follow, because it ain't our prophet. So I just want to give you one tangible example in New York City. In 2011, we found out, or we already knew as a Muslim community, but everybody else found out, that the New York Police Department was engaging in unwarranted surveillance of the Muslim community. We're talking about bookstores, cafes, our masajid, our civic organizations, prominent individuals. I mean, some of the top imams in the country, including ones like Imam Siraj Wahaj, put on lists like the most dangerous, And for our community, it was a confirmation of something we already knew. But at the same time in New York City, there was already an NYPD accountability campaign that's been going on for decades on issues like stop and frisk, which is a discriminatory policy that targets blacks and Latinos in New York City. Did it make sense for the Muslim community to start our own NYPD accountability campaign because all of a sudden now we were being targeted by the New York Police Department? It made absolutely no sense. Because inherently, at the end of the day, the problem was that the New York Police Department, which is an institutionally racist system and entity, was engaging in profiling and targeting of communities based on race, ethnicity, and national origin and religion, right? So we went to the other NYPD accountability groups, Communities United for Police Reform and Stop Brutality coalitions, and we were like, look, we got a problem. Excuse us for some of us. And Brother Dawood reminds us of this all the time. There have been black Muslims that have been part of, ending police brutality and discrimination and profiling for probably centuries since the founding of this country. But immigrant or children of immigrants or communities that don't trace their roots that far back as African Americans haven't been part. And let's be honest, we haven't been part of that work for that long. So when we went to these police accountability campaigns and said, look, yeah, you know, 40 years ago, my father wasn't down with you. He wasn't hanging out with Malcolm X. You know, he just came from the country new. But we're here now. We want to show solidarity. We want to work with you on these issues. They embraced us. Nobody pushed us away. Nobody said, no, we don't want to work with you. They embraced our solidarity. They embraced our numbers and our power and resources that we brought to the table. What did we do with that power? In New York City, NYPD is the largest police force in the country, 35,000. The next largest police force in the country is in LA, and that's 7,000. So look at the margin of the magnitude of the New York Police Department. Former Mayor Michael Bloomberg said if the NYPD was an army, we would be the 5th largest army in the world. So we were taking on the powers that be, and sometimes we underestimate the power of communities of color in our country. So in New York City, we passed 2 legislations in a matter of 18 months. There have been people in this country that have worked to pass legislation for 30 years and they haven't been able to do it. We in New York City passed a legislation called the NYPD Inspector General Act, where we created an oversight mechanism over the New York Police Department that is not overseen by the New York Police Department, which is how it has worked before. Imagine, this has never happened historically in New York City. So this is the first Inspector General ever in New York City. We went to the New York City Council, we mobilized our communities, including Muslims, Latinos, African American, Jews, people of conscience in New York City. We passed the legislation. Michael Bloomberg, probably one of the top 10 billionaires in the country, vetoed our legislation. And it was during an election season. So what did he do? He used his PAC money, the police unions, to go and target city council members who voted with us the first time, and told them that if they didn't vote against the bill, that he was going to put him out of office using his $1 million or millions of bucks that he has and the police unions. So we were like, all right, this is the opportunity that we have to show the country that when it happens in New York, it can happen anywhere. That when communities of color came together, we went back for another vote, and not only did we override Mayor Bloomberg, the police unions, and their money, we won the first time when we passed it when Mayor Bloomberg vetoed us.
That's weird.
And I want to end by saying that it requires investment of our community. It requires that we build solid relationships, and it's not just about writing statements, and it's not about writing a Facebook status and saying you support people. It's about when I tell you you need to be at a rally, or you need to come to a city council hearing, or I need you to go visit your city council member, you need to do it. If we don't do these things and we are not consistent with our organizing, we're never going to win. And I just want to end by saying, when these communities, you know, Latino communities, African American people, both on the local and the national level, when I pick up the phone and I call Black organizations or Latino organizations and I say, hey, the Arab American Association of New York was in a secret document leaked by the New York Police Department, and we were targeted for surveillance. I need you guys to come out with statements. I need you guys to support. Do you think that one of those organizations is going to say no after they saw the type of solidarity and meaningful work that we've done to make sure that we have and reform policies like stop and frisk and surveillance of Muslim communities? Uproar nationally. People all the way from California were like, Linda, what can we do for the Arab American Association of New York? People in Michigan, in Chicago, in Houston, in Florida. The overwhelming support came not because I sat back in my office and was waiting for someone to say something. It's because they felt that they had to reciprocate the type of solidarity that our community was able to show to them. So think of Islam not as just picking up a Quran and sitting in the masjid and reading and telling me you're a hafiz of Quran, which is very important. Being an imam is really important. But if you're not practicing Islam in a way that is relevant and is seen as a representative of what a true Islam is in solidarity work and social justice movement, then I really want to question the type of Islam that people follow.